In this video, I'm going to teach you how to add entourage in Photoshop. I'm going to begin by teaching you how to place a realistic view out the window. Then I'm going to teach you how to place scale figures, and then I'm going to show you how to change the style of your scale figures so that they're not distracting. And there's a couple different techniques that you can use and choose from based on your preference. So I'm going to begin here just by creating a view out the window. Now, you have already seen in a previous video how this rendering was exported to the render gallery with a clear background. And that's what this little checkerboard is back here. This indicates that there's nothing back here. But ultimately, I still need to do a little bit of cropping because whatever is left is going to look cartoony when compared to kind of all of the other things that have been brought in, because again, the student version of Revit at the time of this recording didn't have realistic textures for these grass and asphalt, so they're still looking a little bit cartoony. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those out as well and replace this entire window with a nice image in the background. So first, to begin, I'm just going to use the rectangular marquee tool, and I actually want to come in here and grab all the way the rest of this window, but you can see this window is in perspective, so the bottom is not square. So what we're going to have to use instead is a different tool. Let's go ahead and zoom in, and we're going to use this polygonal lasso tool. And so this allows us to grab things that are at, slightly different angles or that aren't perfectly straight. And you can see here, because of the quality of this rendering and we're zoomed in, we are going to get just a little bit of residue and reflection on that window trim. So you can see here, if you're not accustomed to using this tool, where you see the little 0 or the O, on the lower right hand corner of the lasso, that's when it's ready to close. So you just do that. I'll move it over just a little bit because I don't want to crop too much. And then I hit Control X to delete it. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. You can see there's a little bit of reflection. Now, I could really go to town on this. And by that, I mean just, really Photoshop this to death. But I'm going to do it quickly to show you the technique. And there's a little bit of green reflecting over here in white, and if there is a part of me that wants to be a perfectionist here and make this rendering really good, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that last little bit and pull it out. Okay, so now if you zoom out on this a little bit, I'm hitting the Alt button to change my zoom to zoom in versus zoom out. You can see here that there's some stuff that now is missing from this image, and so, but there's a little bit of a difference between this is what they call the alpha layer, where it's clear, and then where I've deleted. So I'm going to just go ahead and do Revit's work for it, and I'm going to get the slightly cloudier part at the top. I'm going to get rid of that. If you ever get stuck in a command where you've got a marquee and it's not the shape that you want, all you have to do is hit Control D, that's deselect. Okay, so I've gotten rid of that, and then I'm going to do the same thing up here. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing up here, but I'm going to pause. Okay, so now that I'm done with that, I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to bring in a view. Now, I have done a Google search to find an appropriate view. You can do city views, you can do country views, you can do all, street level views, whatever you want to do. I chose this, even though this is not a realistic photograph. This is a digitally rendered one, but I chose this because it kind of shows the context of my idyllic, beautiful, winding site, but also shows a city behind. And you know, whatever this building was, if it's a historical building, it's, you know, it could be in the middle of the city, or it could be sort of beyond out in the country a little bit more. But the process is going to be the same. And I'm going to grab this whole image, even though we're only going to see just a little tiny bit out the window. So I'm going to do Control A for select all, Control C for copy, and I'm going to bring it in and Control V for paste. And then I'm going to put that layer underneath the layer that I just created, and you can see it's now out the window. Now I can move that layer anywhere I want, depending on how much I want to see. You know, maybe I want to bring that city in close or far away. But here's the thing that you need to know to make all of your renders look appropriate. And that is, you have to be aware of the horizon line. Now, the horizon line is a line between the ground and the, you know, or the floor and the air above, just like you see at a sunset. Now, the horizon line is always at the viewer's eye level, and most viewers are at 5'6". And because this is a 2-point perspective, there's actually all these lines are going to converge to a point all the way over here. Same thing here, without getting into too much of the laws of perspective. So there's a vanishing point over here and one over here, and all the parallel lines that are parallel to that back wall will converge to a point here, and the opposite is true for this wall. But right here at 5'6", those vanishing points are on the left and right side. And so as you're adjusting this, you got to make sure that that vanishing point and that horizon line is at roughly eye level. Now, it's a little hard to tell because we've got this other city going on here, but just keep in mind that if standing out here at eye level, you wouldn't be able to see the very top of those buildings. So figure out, anytime you're doing a view out the window, you always have to figure out where the horizon line is in the image, where the horizon line is in your render, and to align the two. Okay, so we've got it figured out there, but now, of course, we've got an issue because we're running out of grass, right? Because we still have a hole right here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control T for transform, hold my shift, hold my, it's always different depending on the Photoshop version. Hold down my shift key, and I'm going to stretch that. And it should be maintaining my proportions. I don't have to hold anything down, just stretch. Okay, so it's good. It's allowing me to stretch that image up, which is going to allow me to get just a little bit more grass. And it's going to bring those buildings a little closer to me. So I'm going to keep doing it. Okay, and that's pretty close. Now, we can Photoshop more grass in if we need to, but that looks pretty good. It gives me a little bit of grass, gives me a little bit of city. It's right about eye level. Keep in mind, this is an 8-foot ceiling. So we've got, this is 4 feet. This is roughly 5 and 5.5. So we're right about where we need to be. So it's just kind of a matter of how do we find the prettiest part of that image that we want to include. Okay, now, the other thing to keep in mind with this image that you're looking at now is it's very vibrant. There's no perspective like that there's glass in front of that image. And unless you get very, very expensive glass that has no color, no tint, no texture, nothing, there's always going to be a little bit of distortion. And so go to that image and tone it down just a little bit. Go to opacity and tone it down to like 95, 85. You know, a trained eye can tell, you know, that we don't want it to be so vibrant. So, you know, bringing it up to 90 is probably good. You can see here that the alpha layer won't print, but if it's distracting for you, all you need to do is just create a marquee, do new layer, hit OK, and fill it with white. Put it at the bottom, and then you won't see that alpha layer back there. So that's our view out the window. Keep in mind, we're on the, we're on the first floor here. Now, that brings me to a very interesting point. You have to be really careful about being aware of kind of where you are height-wise with things. If I was on the second floor of this building, like, 15 feet up, I would just see the tops of the buildings, okay? Because again, if you're at the top, real high, top of a building, or maybe we'd be right here, we just kind of see a little bit of the ground. So the horizon line changes if the view out the window is on the first floor and you're on the second floor. So with that said, we are, remember, like 3 feet 4 inches up off the ground, remember, because we've got some steps. So we could bring that horizon line down just a little bit because we are raised up. So just kind of eyeball it a little bit, but use what you understand about the laws of perspectives to kind of bring that out again. Now, you could also add a little bit of, texture to this, and I can show you. If you go to filter, there's a filter gallery. And you got to be careful because this could, you can overdo this a lot, but, you can make this image glass, and that's how it'll look out, seated glass window, ocean ripple. So it can get kind of funky quickly, but just know that such things are available for you. I'm not going to put anything in there because it's pretty good, but I'm gonna tone it down just a little bit more. It's interesting because every designer eventually, hopefully, someone teaches them how to do this kind of thing. So I'm trying to manually enter it and it's not liking me. Hopefully all interior designers and people who create these graphics, someone teaches them these little steps, and it's hard. So what's interesting about looking at digital renderings is you may not look at the actual rendering itself, because of course we know these Corbusier chairs, are from Revit and we'll see them 1,000 times. But what you're going to start to look at probably is, how did they do the view out the window? Is the horizon line correct? And this one looks pretty good. Good enough for me to stop there. But what I want to teach you next is how to place scale figures. So scale figures can make or break a rendering because they need to be dressed appropriately, they need to be scaled correctly, they need to have, the light and the shadow on their bodies in the correct place, and they just need to not have distracting clothing, things like that. So the scale figure portion that I'm going to go into next has a lot to consider. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to bring in this sheet right here. And these are scale figures to compare. Now, these are all great scale figures, but there's only a few that would work in our interior because we need someone who's wearing appropriate work clothes. We need someone who's not outside because the light is going to show on their body and it's going to conflict with the light that's in our space. We don't want them to be wearing jackets because you don't wear heavy winter coats inside. We don't want them to be wearing sunglasses because most people don't wear sunglasses inside. And we don't want them to have a bunch of stuff on them because we are, they're working. So we really, when you look at this, there's a lot of really great scale figures in here, but this is the only one. This fella right here is the only one that looks like he could fit into our space because of what he's wearing. So what I'm going to do is show you a very quick technique to bring this person in here because it's a great position and he's dressed appropriately, but you can see it's a little bit pixelated. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to bring him in and show you just about as far as we can take him to try to get him to look good because he's so low res. So let's go ahead and put him in here. I'm going to hit the transform button. Okay, So his eye level needs to be, well, he's probably a little bit taller. Most female eye levels are around 5'6". Men are a little bit taller than that. Okay. So no matter where you put him, if you put him back here, his eye level needs to come down at about right there. Okay. If you put him here, his eye level also needs to be right there. Okay. But we'll figure out where he's going to go in just a second. Let's see how close we can get him. He's still a little bit pixelated. So his position is good, but he's going to be a wonderful silhouette. So I'm going to grab this magic wand tool and I'm going to pull his background off of him a little bit. Now, look, his background makes it really hard because it's white and his suit is white. So what we have to do is change our tolerance. So I'm going to hit deselect and I'm going to bring the tolerance down to 10. Now look what happens. So you're telling Photoshop how much variation you want for it to identify a boundary. So once that's selected, I'm going to hit Control X to delete it. Okay, he's got still a little bit of shadow. Now, if I were going to use his actual figure, his realistic figure, I would have to go in and pull all of that white boundary off of him because it's not gonna work. And again, that's that kind of trained eye coming through again. I'm going to use the erase tool to grab a couple of these little parts that are still hanging out. I wonder why it's not pulling it off. Let's see. We can always cut. Okay. Now, when you have an image that's a little bit pixelated like this, you have two options. You can bring the opacity down a lot, and then it ends up just sort of being this non-distracting silhouette. I'm going to move it down just a little bit. This non-distracting silhouette, although I would still come in, get rid of that white. But that helps kind of cover up a scale figure that you love but isn't quite perfect. Then the next thing you can do is double click on this layer and go ahead and select this button where it says color overlay. Now we're going to add that color overlay on top of him, and then right now it's set to black. Okay, so look at what happens. Okay, so now he is set into a black overlay, and the reason why he looks gray is because of his opacity. Okay, now this is not this black figure like this. It reads like a black hole, and your eye goes straight to it. So that is not what we want. If you're going to do a color overlay, you want to come in really light, and again, you can see it's that real soft gray coming through here like that. So that's one method of a scale figure. The next one I'm going to bring in to show you as far as technique goes is this one. Now she's coming in on an alpha layer, so we won't have to do much for her background. And so all I'm going to do is just grab her with the magic wand tool. Let's see if I can grab all of her. And we're going to do Control C for copy, and we'll bring her in here. Okay, so she came in. Where is she? Okay, so that didn't work. Let's go ahead and grab her again. I'll grab the whole thing. Control A, let's see. Here she goes. Okay, so you don't have to do that tool because she comes in with the alpha layer. Okay, now let's say we wanted realistic scale figures because we were feeling really adventurous, and she's a really good one to bring in. So where would I put her in this scene? Well, let's look at her. Let's look at her. She's dressed appropriately. She's got her cell phone and her wallet. So she could be coming in from lunch talking to a client. So she works well here. But she has really a lot of light on her face right here. So she needs to be kind of right by the window. Otherwise, it wouldn't be realistic for her to look that way. Now, she's still a little bright. And again, I once had a professor say, you never want your photoshopping to look like a bad ransom note. And so you got to be really careful kind of blending and finessing these things. Otherwise, it can go south quite quickly. So I'm going to bring her opacity down just a little bit so she's not quite so vibrant. Okay. And you can move her a little bit, or you can put her in front of the window, but I'm trying to not have you to be able to see like too much through her, just the right amount. She can come up just a little bit more. Okay, so that's another workable scale figure method. Again, she's coming in, not a lot of editing that needs to be done, but she would also be a really wonderful silhouette as well. Again, kind of less is more. You can also do a color overlay with her, and if you like to bring in but instead of black, you might want to use white instead. And white also looks very good. And just bringing her. And so the point of a scale figure, again, is to just bring in this concept of height and how big and small things are, how high the ceiling is. But it's also about kind of making this place look really full. And so most of the time, in my experience, interior design students bring in, one lonely scale figure in a place. But you really want a ton of scale figures because it makes the space look full and popular and that people are really enjoying it. So you could find any picture, like you might want to have some people sitting here, you might want to have someone kind of walking from the door. So the more you've got, the better, of course, within reason. But then also, as you start to use these effects, then they don't take away from the scene. They just sort of add this soft nuance, and that can help a lot. Okay, I've got one more trick I want to show you, and these are scale figures to blur. So they are dressed, in work attire. I don't love that she's got her purse on inside, but that's okay because you won't be able to see it with what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to do Control A, Control C, and bring them in. Control V for paste, and I'm going to put them so that they're about to walk through that door. Okay. I'm going to hide this fella. And I need to do some work on this image to just kind of pull that that background off. Now it's going to be a little bit hard because she's got this like white dress on. So we can set our tolerance a little bit lower, but it's not, not all images are perfect. There's always issues with some. And I'm just grabbing in Control X to get rid of stuff. Now, obviously, once you have good scale figures made, you want to save them. And all you do to save them is do this marquee, copy and paste them onto a new document. And for background contents, you do transparent, and they'll come in on the alpha layer. You just hit create, and then they'll come in here. Quick aside, sorry about that. Quick aside is you put it here and then you hit save as, and then you'll have like scale figure walking, and you can pop it into any drawing you've got. So I'm going to take just a quick moment here. I'm going to pause, and I'm going to use this eraser tool. Hopefully it'll work for me now. Yeah, and I'm going to just come through and erase these bits here that are getting in the way. and I can adjust my brush size here and the hardness, of course, here. So I'm going to pause for a second and I'm going to clean this up. I'm not going to go crazy, but I'm just going to do my best to clean it up here. Okay, so you can see here that I have done just some quick erasing, and this is by no means perfect. I mean, they're still kind of junked up, and you know, would not pass leaving them in the state that they're in. But they are great for this blur tool. So I'm going to go to filter, and I'm going to go to blur, and then I'm going to go to motion blur. And you may have seen this if you see a lot of images of renderings. You may see this. This is pretty popular to do right now. You can see you can control the angle of the blur. You know, it can go sideways, up and down, but and you can also control the distance. And you know, generally you ought to be able to figure out the best one, you know, that you like. This is your rendering after all. But you know, you want to just get to a point where you don't have to be so accurate with your Photoshop, but not so that it looks strange. And so this blur, I mean, I've seen them be like this, like really, you know, really blurry. And they're popular because it's sort of makes the scale figure look really anonymous, but also you get a few of these in here and you can really start to make the space feel like it's full and buzzy and people are active. So it's up to you as an interior designer who's going to be making lots of these you know, lots of these renderings, to decide for yourself which one you like the best and which one, you know, which method works for, you know, your application. For example, you know, in an office space where people are working real hard and fast and you want it to look busy, a blur one might work very well. A restaurant where you know, you want to have a gorgeous 3D rendering with several stories and a bunch of people, you know, you're going to want to probably use this silhouette because you can copy it and you can mirror it and transform it, just like how we, you know, messed with the floor planks in an earlier video. And you can just stamp these, you know, stamp these bodies, get 5 or 6 good ones and just stamp them throughout, and just adjust the size to make sure that their eyes are at the correct height. And that's a really quick way. Or if you're really, really good at Photoshop and you're perfect at finding excellent realistic people with the light in the perfect spot and the you know, they're dressed appropriately and all that stuff, you know, you can go with a realistic approach. But the key to rendering, whether it's the view to the outside or the scale figures inside, is for both of those things not to take away from all the work that you've done on the rendering itself, and to make sure that the scale figures add what they're supposed to, which is the you know, a sense of the size of the space and then making it feel full of life. And once you've done both of those things, you can consider yourself to be a success, because you've got a rendering that shows, you know, a space that's got just a little bit more to it than it did when it popped out of the Revit render gallery. Okay, looks good.